Your son got me pregnant. You better pay me $30,000 in alimony. That's what I was told the moment I picked up the restaurant's phone. The voice on the other end belonged to a young woman, who launched into a tirade without even bothering to introduce herself. Her aggressive tone and wild accusations made me think it was just another prank call, the kind you get when you run a popular restaurant in New York City. My name is Melissa Brown, and while I don't want to sound boastful, my restaurant has been featured on national television and in magazines. With that kind of exposure, we're always fully booked. But it also means dealing with a lot of nuisance calls and aggressive sales pitches. I've become pretty sloppy with handling them, assuming they're just more of the same. But when this woman claimed my son had gotten her pregnant, I was caught off guard. I do have a son. The idea that he could have done something like this seemed absurd. Despite thinking it was a prank, the shocking nature of her accusations piqued my curiosity, so I decided to listen, at least for a little while. I had an abortion. What are you going to do about the trauma I've been through? Are you going to pay for the surgery too? She demanded. First of all, may I ask who I'm speaking to? I asked, trying to keep my tone polite despite the bizarre situation. Even with prank calls in the service industry, you have to maintain a certain level of decorum. It wouldn't do to have our conversation recorded and exaggerated online. I'm a customer at your restaurant. Is that seriously the first thing you ask after your son hurt me? Your family has no sense of decency or compassion, she fired back. I find it hard to believe my son would do such a thing, I replied, glancing over at my staff, who were watching me curiously. They could tell this wasn't the usual dinner reservation call. I smiled and waved at them to assure them everything was fine. Your son assaulted me on a dark street, and you recognized him in the dark. Are you sure it was my son? I asked, trying to reason with her. Don't play dumb. I'm absolutely certain it was your son. I've been terrified ever since. I can't even go out alone anymore. What are you going to do about this? She started giving details about the alleged assault, but her story was hard to believe. I think you might be mistaking my son for someone else. But this is a serious accusation. Can we meet in person to discuss it? I suggested, knowing that most prank callers would back down when faced with the prospect of a face-to-face meeting. You want me to meet with a criminal's parent? How dare you suggest that to a victim? She shouted. But I'd like to verify your story in person, I insisted. Are you saying I'm lying? She retorted angrily. That's not what I meant, I replied, though I wanted to tell her she was lying. Instead, I held back and kept my tone neutral, but she continued to berate me, questioning how someone like me could run a business. Why don't we meet and talk about this anyway? I suggested again, hoping to bring an end to the call. But she refused, no matter how many times I proposed it. So, what do you want me to do? I finally asked. Pay me $30,000 in alimony, she demanded. But this is clearly a case of mistaken identity, and I can't afford that much money, I explained. You can pay. I know your business is thriving. Pay up or I'll sue you, she threatened. Even though my restaurant is doing well, $30,000 is a significant amount, and I had no intention of paying. Are you sure you want to involve the police? I asked calmly. There was a brief silence on the other end before she replied. If there's evidence, you'll pay the alimony, right? I would consider it, I answered, knowing she wouldn't have any. Then wait, I'll bring the evidence, she said, hanging up abruptly. Owner, are you all right? Mr. Murphy, one of my employees, asked, noticing my discomfort. It's nothing, just a prank call, I assured him, even though I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this wasn't over. A few days later, while preparing for dinner, I had almost forgotten about the call when Mr. Murphy approached me with a manila envelope, his face pale. What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost, I said. Owner, this came for you, he replied, handing me the envelope. Inside was a letter addressed to me. Ms. Melissa Brown, I was assaulted and impregnated by your son. Please transfer $30,000 as alimony. Below the demand were bank transfer details and the name Karen Williams. Mr. Murphy was visibly shaken after being the first to see the contents of the unsealed letter. Calm down, I said. You know my son, right? He nodded, relieved. But then I noticed there was something else in the envelope. A pregnancy test. What's that? Mr. Murphy asked, his voice trembling. The commotion caught the attention of the other employees, who looked on with concern. Could it really be the owner's son? I could see the doubt in some of their eyes, but they quickly understood when I explained the situation. I put the items away on my desk and went back to work, though the uneasy feeling lingered. A few days passed without transferring any money, but then Mr. Murphy came to me again with another manila envelope, looking fed up. "Owner, this came again," he said, handing it to me. "I see. Check the contents and put it away in the usual place," I instructed him. These harassing letters started arriving multiple times a day, filled with threats and insults. "Are you planning to run and hide? The owner is the parent of a criminal. Her son got a college girl pregnant and didn't even apologize. The owner of this restaurant is a heartless, cruel woman with no sense of responsibility. It's your fault your son turned out like this. I'll make sure no customers come to your restaurant. It's for the good of the world." The threats escalated, but thankfully, no one had claimed anything was actually wrong with our food. The constant anxiety of being set up was exhausting, and it was starting to show in our business. I noticed something alarming. Vacant seats were becoming more common at lunch. The number of customers was gradually but noticeably declining. "It's unusual," I thought to myself. Today, we even had 2 tables empty. My thoughts drifted to the fresh ingredients in the kitchen, waiting to be used. "Owner," Mr. Murphy called, interrupting my thoughts. I looked up to see him approaching with his laptop in hand. "Take a look at this review site," he said, his voice heavy with concern. On the screen were the latest reviews, filled with harsh and slanderous comments. Terrible customer service. They don't listen, especially the owner, who seems to be getting full of herself after being on TV and in magazines. The food is getting worse. Last time, the soup tasted so plain. I even saw an employee drop a piece of meat before grilling and sneak it back onto the plate. Every single day, more poor reviews were posted, causing our star rating to plummet. I realized I was shaking with anger. "This is unacceptable," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Why should this restaurant, which we've worked so hard to build to please our customers, be attacked with such baseless accusations? "Are the preparations progressing?" I asked Mr. Murphy, my voice colder than usual. "Yes, they're almost completed," he replied. Hearing this, I couldn't help but smirk. It had been a week since we discovered the slanderous comments on the review site, and since then, the number of customers had continued to dwindle. When I stepped into the dining area, I noticed Mr. Anderson, one of our regulars, sitting at the counter next to a young woman. "Mr. Anderson, thank you as always," I greeted him with a smile. "It's tough for you lately, Melissa," he said sympathetically, "but don't lose hope. I'm on your side, and will support your son as he atones for his actions." "What?" I was taken aback, completely blindsided by his words. "Well, I noticed it's quieter here than usual, so I wondered what happened. Then this young lady here kindly showed me a webpage about your restaurant," he said, gesturing to the pretty woman in her early 20s sitting next to him. "I really feel for you. I love this place, so I thought I'd come more often to help out in any way I can," she added, smiling sweetly. I recognized her. She'd been frequenting the restaurant recently. "Excuse me, but what's written there is a misunderstanding," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The regulars were wondering why the place has been so empty lately, so I explained it to them, she said nonchalantly. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "You've been spreading rumors online, and now you're telling our patrons?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Wow, that's scary," she said, feigning innocence. "The internet says the owner is a terrible person. I thought it wasn't true, but it seems you really are like the parent of a man who assaulted women. Maybe you should apologize if you think you did something wrong." She twisted away from me as if she expected me to strike her, even though I hadn't moved a muscle. "Miss, that's not a nice way to talk. Louis is probably just tired from everything that's going on," Mr. Anderson said, trying to defend me. But that wasn't the point. I was about to explain that the real issue was far more serious when suddenly her bag slipped from the back of her chair. It must have shifted while she was twisting around. Despite my simmering rage, my instincts kicked in, and I moved to pick up her bag. That's when I saw it. Karen Williams. The name on the student ID card that had fallen out stopped me in my tracks. "No worries, I'll pick it up myself," she said quickly, reaching for the bag and the ID. "But I got there first." "Hey, give it back," she demanded, her voice laced with panic. But it wasn't a mistake. The name on that ID was the same as the one on the letter with the pregnancy test, which she had sent as so-called evidence. So it was you, I said, my voice low with realization. I've been looking for you, Karen Williams. I must have swapped it with a friend's by mistake. I'm not Karen, she stammered, clearly flustered. Your face and the one on the ID are the same. Interesting, so you're a student at Central College? I pressed, holding the ID up. No, I'm telling you, you're mistaken, she insisted, but her growing panic was obvious. Beside her, Mr. Anderson looked puzzled, completely unaware of what was unfolding. I'm going to sue you, I announced, my words causing the few scattered patrons to turn and look. What? What did I do? She asked, trying to maintain her composure. I believe you know exactly what you did. Since we're all here, why don't we let everyone know? I said, looking around the bar. It was mostly filled with regulars. And while it was comforting to have loyal customers, the sight of so few new faces fueled my anger toward this young woman for disrupting our business. Let me start. Are you the one who called claiming my son assaulted you and got you pregnant, demanding alimony? I asked, glaring at her. Yes, that's me. I'm the one your son assaulted, she admitted, surprisingly easily. What? You want to embarrass me in front of all these people? This could backfire, you know, considering the reputation of your restaurant, she said defiantly, crossing her arms. Her attitude only served to ignite my fury further. Mr. Murphy, bring everything over, I instructed, my voice cold as ice. He hurried off and returned with a laptop from the office and a stack of envelopes and documents about 4 inches thick. Was it you who kept sending harassing letters to the restaurant over and over again? I asked, narrowing my eyes at her. The air in the restaurant was thick with tension as everyone awaited her response. I began reading some of the letters aloud, ensuring everyone in the restaurant could hear. Pay up or run. This owner is a criminal's parent. Her son impregnates a college girl and doesn't even apologize. Poor souls being forced to eat food from this woman's restaurant. I'm sure I'm going to make customers stop coming here. It's for the greater good. The harsh words left some of the regulars visibly shocked, covering their mouths in disbelief. This was outright blackmail. There's no proof that I sent those letters. Maybe someone else who heard the rumors sent them for fun. The young woman stammered, desperately trying to defend herself. Silently, I opened my laptop and showed her the screen of another review site. Some of you might have seen this, defamation on this review site. You did this too, right? I asked. Where's your evidence? Are you even thinking straight? She shot back, her voice tinged with hysteria. Oh, you seem to love evidence. How about this mess of evidence you've been trying to pass off? I said, holding up the first letter and the fake pregnancy test for Mr. Anderson to see. This is the pregnancy test she brought as evidence. What do you think? Isn't this red line just a marker? Even my old eyes can see that, Mr. Anderson remarked. The customers began to buzz with conversation, though some were still uncertain whom to believe. This might not prove I was assaulted, but it doesn't prove I'm wrong either, she shouted, trying to maintain her stance. I was assaulted by your son. He admitted it himself. It's disrespectful to doubt that. As customers whispered in hushed tones, uncertain of the truth, she started to cry, trying to draw sympathy. Since I'm the victim, it must be true, she insisted. Let me prove it then, my son. He's 3 years old, I said, revealing the truth that left her momentarily speechless. What? She gasped, clearly taken aback. My son may be a bit rambunctious and strong for a 3-year-old, but there's no way he could have assaulted you, I continued calmly. No way. And if you have a big son, you live together, right? I even have a picture, she exclaimed, pulling out her smartphone to show a photo of what appeared to be a young man talking to me at the back door of the store. Oh, isn't that Taylor? Mr. Anderson remarked. See? You do have 2 sons, she said, regaining her confidence. You're wrong, I immediately corrected her. This is my niece. Your niece? She asked, her confidence faltering. Yes, and actually, she's a girl. She's quite tomboyish and often mistaken for a boy, even as an adult. She's a college student, and since she boards at my place, I ask her to cook dinner and pick up my son as part of her rent. If you need more evidence, I can bring her here for you to check, I added, watching as the color drained from her face. And by the way, I've already gathered all the evidence about the harassment letters and the posts on the review site. Evidence? No way, she murmured, looking as though she might collapse. I've already consulted with the police and my attorney, I explained. The first piece of evidence, a letter from you with fingerprints that matched those on the harassment letters. All the posts on the review site were confirmed to be from the same person after a disclosure request. With no escape, she sank to the floor, drained of all defiance. You were just saying that it's better to apologize quickly if you've done something wrong, weren't you? I reminded her. She mumbled something, pale and looking down. But I couldn't make out whether it was an apology. I will contact the police about you. I'll inform your parents and your college as well. Be prepared for a lawsuit for emotional distress and damages, I stated firmly. No, please don't do that. I'm still a student. Please, spare me, she begged. You may be a student, but you're an adult over 18 years old. You will take responsibility for your actions, I replied, my voice unwavering. I can't handle that. Please, stop, she whimpered. Subsequently, I filed a criminal complaint against Karen Williams for defamation, business obstruction, and damages to the shop. It turned out she had been living beyond her means, buying brand-name bags and clothes on credit. When she couldn't keep up with the payments, she resorted to these crimes. As a result, she was expelled from her college. The incident even made the news, and now she's the one receiving harassment after her personal information was exposed. Through my lawyer, we managed to have all the slanderous posts on the review site deleted. Unexpectedly, the uproar turned into a positive outcome, clearing up misunderstandings among my regular customers. The number of customers returned to normal. While the incident deterred new customers, almost no regulars left, despite the lies Karen had spread. It was gratifying to know that her false claims weren't taken at face value. Moving forward, I aim to continue running the restaurant with integrity, meeting the trust of my customers,